And then, of course, she went off to college, got married, lived in Austin for quite some time, but she never got over Rockport. She always longed for Rockport. So she and her husband moved back in about 2000. But before that, she went to, was it a garage sale?
It was the first one.
And she found the Aransas County postcard. So she got the bug. So she's been to every estate sale, every garage sale, every antique store, and finally she had to resort to the one that we all hate to resort to, eBay. And so anyway, she's going to present her 20 years of postcards. She and Pam Stranahan wrote a book called Postcards of Aransas County. They're for sale. And also, if anybody's interested, she had the originals, but they're duplicate originals. So if you see me afterwards, if you're interested in buying the postcard. And with any more ado, I'll send her up here. Kam Wagert.
Thank you, Maureen. So this is actually a cover of the book, and like Maureen said, I do have postcards for sale. And the thing about eBay is they've gotten so expensive on eBay, I can't afford it anymore, I'll be honest with you. And I set myself a maximum bid, and people were bidding really hundreds now for postcards of Aransas County, especially the really old ones. So if you're really interested in Aransas County postcards, I will tell you that this book has 100 of my postcards in the book. And Pam and I were very careful. We did research on every postcard and wrote a narrative about it. So it's actually a better buy at $20, including tax, than to get one postcard and pay maybe $5 or $6, whatever I have on them. But when I first started with the postcards, like Maureen said, I was going to garage sales and estate sales, and then I started reading about, postcards in general, and they have a very interesting history in themselves. They started out with unlined, back that was just completely plain, and people would write on that and then put the addressee on the one side and write their message on the other. And of course, back then, the stamps were a penny, and hence they became known as penny postcards. And then there was a time, and this was in the early 1900s, where the photography was black and white. And so they had ladies in factories that were hand tinting these postcards. And what was happening, they were dipping the brush into their mouth and using that and then painting, and the ladies were getting real sick. So they only did that hand tinting for a very brief period of time, but I do have a couple of hand tinted postcards that I will show you today. And the other thing that happened in the 1930s, they started printing postcards on linen paper. And I've got a postcard that I'll be showing you that has linen on it. So I'm going to step to the back so y'all can have a good view of the postcards. And we'll start with, I need Scott. There, okay. This is, of course, the Fulton Mansion. I think I went one too fast. And this is a very early view of the Fulton Mansion. And the Fulton Mansion was built in 1874 to 1877, 3 years. And at the very beginning, it had the fountain, and you can see urns in front, and a whole different landscape than what you see today. Now, this next postcard is a view later, and this is when there was a restaurant there. There was a restaurant in the basement, and they ended up painting the Fulton Mansion. This is a view of the old courthouse. It was built in 1889 by James Riley Garden. James Riley Garden was 26 years old when he built this courthouse. It was his first one. It came in at $20,000. The jail to the right came in at $10,000. And the cupola at the very top of the courthouse during World War II, folks would go up there and look for enemy planes during the war. Sad to say, this courthouse was torn down in 1955 and replaced with the shoebox that we have today. And this was made of shellcrete. They took the shellcrete and lined Fulton Beach Road with it as riprap. So sometimes when you're walking along on Fulton Beach Road, you can still find big chunks of this courthouse along the beach. Here it is in color, and I have this postcard for sale today. It is a Moorish design, and you notice the arches, and you notice the grounds were very, very different. It was where the courthouse is today, okay? Just a lovely, lovely building. It was not air conditioned, and it was not handicap accessible, so you know there were no elevators. And in 1955, we had a judge who was handicapped, and another reason it was torn down, frankly, it wasn't air conditioned. It was hard for handicapped folks to get around, and it's true that during World War II, when planes flew overhead, parts of the ceiling would fall down. So, I mean, there were reasons that people thought it should be torn down, but on the other hand, a lot of old buildings have been restored and restored nicely. In fact, if you ever go to Victoria, on James Riley Garden Courthouse in Victoria has been restored and is beautiful, if you want to see the kind of work that he did.
Do you know what year, how many years after this one that he done the one?
I want to say, Reba, about 10 years. But this one, in 1889, was his very first courthouse. And he did other buildings. He did federal buildings, and he actually worked all over the United States.
Riley, did you say his last name?
James Riley Gordon.
Gordon.
Yeah. Okay, here's a linen postcard. And can you tell that it is linen? And I think this is the one. Can you see a black wrought iron gate around it?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Okay, they put the, or fence, I should say, black wrought iron fence around it to keep out wandering cattle. Okay, and then during World War II, they took out the fence and melted it for the war effort. Nothing left. This is the Bayside Inn. The Bayside Inn was on Water Street, and it was where the Laguna Reef Hotel is now. And this is so interesting. I just recently found out last week that at one time this was called the Bayview Inn. I went to a presentation at the Aransas County Historical Society lab, and there was a picture, the same building, but called the Bayview Inn. So this was a two-story, as you can see, wooden hotel. And they had a long pier that went out into the bay, at Aransas Bay, and they would allow the neighbors, as well as the guests, to go out onto the pier, and they had a little pavilion at the end for bathing. Now this is the Del Mar Hotel. It started out being called the Aransas Hotel, and this was also built in 1889, and it was, at the time, the largest structure, wooden structure in Texas. It took up the entire city block, down there where the Daily Grind is now. The whole block was this hotel. So it's 3 stories. It had 100 rooms. It had a dining room, and they had their own orchestra. They had their own bakery. They had a pier also that went out, and at the end of the pier they had a pavilion. Horrible thing about this hotel, started out as the Aransas, ended up as the Del Mar. March the 2nd of 1919, before the big hurricane of September of 1919, this hotel burned to the ground. And of course, because it was so big, it took several days for it to burn down completely. Now, we have been told by the old timers, you know that heat rises. So the roof caught on fire, because the whole thing was on fire. And the winds carried the burning roof out into Copano Bay. And it landed in Copano Bay and stayed on fire for a day or two. And so people in their little boats came and fished by the light of the burning roof. So we've been told. Wow. This is another great hotel. Great hotel. This is the La Playa. Well, this one was actually in front of the Del Mar on the Rocky Point. The Rocky Point was a limestone ledge that is how Rockport got its name, from the Rocky Point. And this, as you can see, is 3 stories. And this one was badly, badly damaged in the Great Hurricane of 1919. The little building to the right is Gibson's Oyster House. And this picture, you can tell, was taken from Aransas Bay looking towards the shoreline. So this is an unusual picture in that respect. So anyway, that's the La Playa. Those were the 3 really great hotels that we had in Rockport. I show you this one because my husband Scott, can you see the difference? Here's this one versus this one. This is the original postcard. Here's how he cleaned it up for the book. Okay.
Is that water going back on the other side of that old house?
There's water going towards the oyster house,
Yeah.
and there's flowers, a flowering bush on the left of the building, and there's water just in front, and a little bit of water off to the right. Yeah. Because it was the rocky.
Looks like it's going almost up to the building.
No, that's grass out in front. Is that what you're talking about? You see the little pier, and then there's a shoreline, and then there's grass.
I think the one on the right can.
Oh yeah,
Back to the right.
yes, that is. That's water.
Well, it is?
Yeah. I forgot to tell you about the Rocky Point. The Rocky Point was there until 1940 when they blasted it out to make the Rockport Harbor, the fishbowl.
Oh,
Okay? So, yeah, of course the La Playa was not there because the 1919 storm really damaged it. Okay, at the end of the pier, which was in front of Del Mar, and actually I guess in front of La Playa, if you think about it, was this pavilion. Okay, there was a big controversy about the name of this pavilion. Okay, we called it the Bailey Pavilion for years and years and years in the historical groups. And what would happen here, if you look on the gangplank, you see people that look like they're in a band. So they had plays here, they had minstrel shows, and for 15 cents you could rent a little room and change into your bathing suit. People back then did not swim. They put on their bathing suit, which was made of wool, and they basically sat in the water. So we knew this was the Bailey's Pavilion, and then all of a sudden, that is the Hertzfeld Pavilion. So what I need to tell you is a man by the name of Isidore Hertzfeld bought Bailey's Pavilion and changed the name of it to Hertzfeld Pavilion. Same building. And this one, again, destroyed in the September 1919 hurricane. Washed up on Water Street. Okay, this is the Oak Shore Club, and this building, let me see if I can tell you where it was. It was on Trailer Street, and a man by the name of William S. Hall, his wife, saw the Fulton Mansion and said, I gotta have a house as fine as that. So he built her this big mansion. And it was their home for many years, and then when they passed away, it was made into the Oak Shore Club, which was a private club mainly for duck hunters, that the duck hunters would bring their families, and the families would stay in houses and apartments like the one on the right. This hotel or club was torn down in 1956. It had a bowling alley in it. I don't know if anybody remembers it, but I have met some people that do remember this building. It had fallen into a state of bad repair. A man by the name of Sid Freeborn bought this property, and in fact, a man by the name of Jimmy Sorensen, who was the bank president here, was born in this house. Okay, this is the First National Bank, and interesting story about this. First National Bank started out as the First National Bank of Aransas Pass because Rockport changed its name to Aransas Pass for a couple of years. The reason we did is because we wanted to get the deep water port, and so we were vying for the attention of the folks that were going to build it. And so, you know, there is the Aransas Pass. This was before the town of Aransas Pass. So we called ourselves Aransas Pass. So this was the First National Bank of Aransas Pass.
Where was it located?
It was located right by the Del Mar Hotel.
Okay.
Next street over, well, right across the street. This is the old Rockport School. It was where the old Rockport School, community school is now, where they have the plays. This one was built in 1892. This is one of the hand-tinted one I was telling you about. You can tell that it's been hand-tinted. And what I love about this, you can see the entire school body and faculty in front, sitting out there. And you can see at the time, this is pretty much, you know, wilderness. There are no other buildings around. There's one little building in the far right, but this made it through the 1919 hurricane. It was damaged, but it was rebuilt. And then this was torn down in 1935, and they built the, what's it called, Old Rockport School, where they have the plays now.
On Live Oak Street.
Yeah, on Live Oak Street. So here's Austin Street in the 1950s. And what I do with my postcards, first of all, I have a friend, his name is David Murrah. He knows his cars. So I can show him a car and he can exactly tell me what year it is. And then the other thing I do is I study the movie that's showing, and I go to Wikipedia and I look at when that movie was planned, so I can kind of figure out the year. This one is about 1956. Now y'all look at how wide the streets were. So this is looking north, and Johnson's drugstore on the corner. Let me see if I can get it. Well, it's on the corner on the left. They had a liquor store in the Johnson's drugstore, which was kind of unique. The reason the street looks so wide, I think, is because it didn't have bulb outs. It didn't have the center concrete. But, okay, here's an aerial of Rockport. Boy, this is just great because if you look at the top, there's no Kivalagro. So, you know, there's another way that you can date a postcard, because you know that Kivalagro was started in 1963. It was developed by a man by the name of Carl Kruger. And look at our beach. I mean, you know, the Maritime Museum's not there, so the Rockport Center for the Arts is not there. And it's just white sand. You know, you don't have any mid-beach pavilions, you don't have the saltwater pavilions, it's just the beach. Now we do have what we call the round part is the bowl, this is the fish bowl. That's the harbor. But what's great about these aerial photos, you can study them with a magnifying glass and zoom in on the buildings, you know, because these are the days that we had Riceco and Jackson Seafood, and you can really see what was there. And a lot of these buildings are no longer there. Some of them are still there. This is an aerial of Fulton. And what I like about this one, my grandfather's house is the Sugar Shack in Fulton. So I consider myself a third generation person of Aransas County, but I hang out with people that are sixth generation, so that means nothing. But anyway, my grandfather had the Coach Cottages on Fulton Beach Road, which are exactly where TG's and the Inn at Fulton Harbor are now. And if you look closely, you can see a little row. Well, I cannot get this little marker to work. Oh, yes, I can.
It's working.
They're right. They're there. There's a little row of cottages, and those are the Poach cottages. They're next to what were the Durbridge cottages, and those were destroyed completely in Hurricane Beulah.
And what's the date on that?
On that one that I just showed you, 1961, 62.
We have a house that was on Fulton Beach Road that was moved over to 5th Street. And it was built in 1955, so it might have been on.
Yeah, and you know what's so great about this? If you really look at it and study it, you see the airport back there? I mean, I study this one a lot too, because I just know some people that live in Fulton, and it's just a great picture. And besides that, look at their beach, and okay, they hadn't moved the Paws and Paws building, right? You can just really look at this. I look at it a long time. Lots of times.
The aerial pictures.
Okay, different people, like Frank Whaley was a very famous photographer, and the early ones, I'm going to show you one that was taken by a man named Dye, D-Y-E. Like this one. Oh, look at this one. Now this is hand tinted. This is Austin Street. This is very early 1900s, extremely early 1900s, and you know, before the automobile. And so the left side is where it used to be, well, if you're not from here, you won't know what I'm talking about. Corky's and Johnson's Drugstore, and the right side would be a Stell Star Gallery today, but
Wasn't it Sorensen's?
Sorensen's, right, Sorensen's store. But I just love this picture too. I think about those ladies, you know, dipping the brushes in their mouth and getting they all got sick. And
Did they have arsenic in those
paint
paints?
has lead.
Oh,
Oh,
lead.
good.
Yeah, lead.
Notice the utility posts.
Oh yeah, look at that. Look at that.
Nancy noticed that.
It's just, you know, if you guys want a great hobby, I hate to say it, postcards are so fun. And I have a friend, he collects postcards from all over the world. I mean, he has hundreds of thousands of postcards all over the world, and he has them labeled like transportation, you know, trains, birds. So if you pick a topic that you're really interested in and get into it now, you know, you can find them. You can still find them. Like I say, Aransas County, though, they've gone just out of sight on the prices of old Aransas County postcards. Okay, this is a great one. When I was in high school in the late 60s and 70s, this boat, the Hooving Crane, would go out of the sea gun. And it would take us just kind of on excursions. But the Sea Gun was a very popular resort, and of course they closed it all down. You could still, I think, buy those little cottages over there, but the hotel itself, they tore that down. Okay, this is a good one. This boat is called, I hope you can see, it's called the Miss Aransas. And what's great about this particular postcard? Okay, first of all, I think it was taken in Fulton, because I think that building on the left looks like something I've seen in Fulton. But you know, if you walk around, most shrimp boats are named for women. You know, have you ever noticed that? You know, like Miss Sally or Miss whatever. So here's one that's named for the county. I just find that very unusual that they would name a boat for the county. Okay, here's my favorite. This is the Pilot Boy. Now the reason this is my very favorite, the Pilot Boy. Pilot Boy was a steamship that went between Rockport and Port Aransas. Now, Port Aransas used to be called Tarpon. Well, in 1916, we had a hurricane that was every bit as big as the 1919 one, but nobody knows about it, nobody talks about it. Anyway, Pilot Boy goes out into Aransas Bay. Now, I have since found out from people that the reason the boats would go out into the bay during a hurricane is because they felt like if they anchored or moored them at the wharf, the wind and the waves would just pound them to bits on the rocks or the wharf. So they went out to the bay and anchored and hoped for the best. So the Pilot Boy goes out there and anchors. Of course, the ship sinks. And of course, there's 5 people on board. And so they find the bodies of 3 of the crew, and one of the crewmen had been all scratched up because they had a cat as a mascot. 2 of the crew survived. That is the tragic story of the Pilot Boy. If you ever go to the Port Aransas Museum, they have so many photographs of the Pilot Boy. I'm so jealous. They have a lot of them because, like I'm telling you, the Pilot Boy went between Rockport and Port Aransas. And the other cool thing about this picture, this wharf, that what you're seeing there are little tracks. That was behind the Sorensen ship chandlery. And what they would do is they would put, behind us Stell Star today, they would put the goods for the ship on little carts and then scoot them on out there to the boats. And then they also had a pavilion at the end of the Sorensen wharf. Oh. Just talked about you and your amazing postcard collection. So here's another boat. It's called the Nereid, and this was out of Tarpon, which was Port Aransas, our early name, and people would just go for excursions. They just get on the boat, which reminds me, who wants to talk about the cruise we're having? Well, I'll talk about it. Here's Pam. Pam will talk about the historical cruise that we're having. You don't want to miss this.
On April 11th, how many people have gone on the cruise before? Okay, so we've got a lot of people that have been. We're having a history cruise. where we'll go out into Aransas Bay and then over into, starting out in Aransas Bay and over way far into Coconut Bay. And talk about, first of all, the islands, because people who came here settled the islands first, and then moved on and settled towns, which are now essentially ghost towns, like Coconut, Lamar, St. Mary's, and Aransas City. So we'll talk about all those different ports that were really, really important in the 1800s. So we have tickets out here, $45, refreshments, wine and cheese, and a 2-hour tour. You really need to see El Copano before it's too late. The ruins, the Shell Creek ruins of the houses are tumbling into Copano Bay. They will not be there too much longer. You need to see them while you can. It's a great cruise.
Which boat are we taking?
The skimmer.
Okay.
Look at this. It's an early view of Keel Lake Road. Now, I hope you realize Finisterre, not built on. Curlew, not built on. Late 1963, early 64.
Can I add something? Keel Agro was built in stages, in phases. These are the first two. Now, how do I know that? Because my daddy built it. He put in the seawall. He put in the curbs and the roads. And then in '72, they finished section 5. And if you look at the difference in the seawall, this is pretty straight, but when you go out to Finisterre and look at the seawall, it's in radiuses, so they're curved. So that's another difference, and that was done in '72. This one started around '63, like Kam said.
And so Vicky's daddy was Vermilion Construction Company. Vermilion, you know that name?
Good to know.
When did they actually complete the park for parking the boats? You know,
The marina?
the marina.
Well, you can see it right there.
Yeah,
They
it
got
was done early
two.
on.
If you look at the little bulb out looking thing, and then come this way, there's two rectangles that are kind of a white color. That's the beginning of the marina.
Oh, right up there?
Yeah.
The tip?
Yeah.
The marina?
If you kind of toward the middle of Little Bay.
Okay.
And there's two rectangles, but that was the beginning, and then the hotel, you see the other big bulb out, that was the hotel, and there was a club up in the second story, and there was a motel there.
And about what year was that?
60, I would say that's around 64 maybe.
Yeah.
No, the hotel that you're
Oh,
talking
the
about.
hotel?
Was the hotel
It was about
active then?
64, yeah.
Did they rent people in? I mean,
Yeah, they rented it to people, and the club was like, you know, the yacht club now.
yes.
Because they didn't have a nice place to,
Right.
and so when Carl Kruger came in, that was one of the things he and his developers put in, was a nice place to
Right.
have dinner or business meetings or whatever. And then Meredith Long then added a little bit this way, if I could point. Can I point?
I wish
Doesn't
you could. It doesn't
yeah.
point on the TV
Yeah.
screen.
Anyway.
I'm sorry.
You see the two lines kind of going diagonally toward the trees? See, Harbor Oaks isn't there either. That didn't come till after Keel Agro. That was about the 80s. But those two lines, those are piers, and this side of the little bulb out thing, that's where the hotel was. And then come back.
Can you go up there?
Yeah, I can try.
Walk
Come
up
on,
this-
Vicki. I'd let you have this, but it doesn't work on the screen. I'm sorry.
But this is fascinating.
It is very interesting.
I have a pamphlet that says that the Leadville houses of.
That's the what?
This is the hotel right there.
And that's where they
This
had
is,
the,
you can see the little around here?
yes.
Okay, these were different little motel units. There were probably 3 or 4 of them. And this is the office. There was a pool, hadn't been built yet, according to this picture. This was where the club was. Then Meredith Long built his studio, his gallery right about here, which brought a lot of art here. This is the marina here.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
It's covered then.
Covered boats.
Yeah,
Where were the dolphin shows?
I would assume they were down here because based on the pictures that you got from Carla. So, but if you can see that this was phase 1, and whenever these houses were going out into the drink, Daddy went in without permission from the Corps of Engineers and saved the house. Of course, he got in a lot of trouble.
A lot of
But he
grief.
said, "Well, what are you going to do? You going to let the house fall in the water?" So he did all the seawall and all the thing, and then my first husband finished it in 72, 73. He finished at phase 5, which is the end of Key Lake.
Okay. Well, that's
I have a pamphlet here that says that the new homes start at $11,000.
Yeah. the lots, at one time,
2,800.
about this time, it was $3,500 a lot.
Oh my goodness.
Because that's how Daddy got paid sometimes.
Absolutely.
Wow.
I got that off at eBay.
Okay, you guys, this is the old causeway. Now, what happened, we had a drive here, I'm gonna say, in the late 1920s. It was called the Hub the Coast Highway. And so what they were trying to do is connect a highway, make a highway connecting Houston down to this part of the woods. So we built the first causeway, which y'all know is now the fishing pier. And this was completed in 1930. Okay, here are the Oak Shore Apartments. These are, if you go past where Paws and Paws is on Fulton Beach Road, and you're gonna come to an area which is high up, it's kind of a bluff, and you're gonna see these same palm trees. These were here until the Maureen 80s, Vicky 80s,
About 75,
70s.
because Daddy knocked them down.
Yeah, they were knocked down.
But they had nice oak furniture.
Oh.
I mean, heavy oak furniture because they didn't want it, and so we brought it home and I painted it.
Oh.
So this is Palm Village. Well, I'll tell you about Palm Village. Palm Village started out as Palm Courts, and these were little cottages that you would rent with your family. They even have a cottage for your maid quarters.
Okay.
And these were torn down to make Allegro North condos. I gotta check my cheat notes here. Was it?
It was somewhere around
Palm
80.
Village, it was torn down in 1974 for the Key Allegro condos. 1974.
And the Blevins family owned them.
Yep,
Blevins?
Blevins, hence Blevins Channel. Okay, Bernadine, you want to tell us about these?
No, I'll let you do it.
No, that's how we lure you in.
There's one down by the Laguna, the 3-story ones.
Ah, okay.
No, these are the ones down by the other way. Jim, you want to talk about them? These are Hunt's Courts. And, okay, here's just a little history. Frank Hunt and his son Fred were from Beeville. And in 1930s on Water Street, they built these. And they were Hunt's Courts. They were actually in Maureen 2 sections by you and
There was
the other.
one, yeah, where the castle is now.
Yeah,
But originally there was some down by Laguna Reef. There were 3-story ones also.
right. And that's one there.
Apartments.
Yeah. So these were all eventually torn down or sold, right?
Have a pink hotel there on the left, that one's still there, isn't it?
Is that the one sold? That's
This one that's
Oceanside?
all being remodeled kind of right now.
Did they just quit working with it?
Yeah.
Is that the one, the pink roof one?
Yeah, I think they started on
Oh,
Back to the
sorry.
coast and
Look at that.
Wow.
Okay, Fulton Mansion had a trailer park in front. And this was from about 1955 until the 1970s.
Trailer Park, yeah.
And it was just pitiful because the Fulton Mansion had fallen into a state of very bad disrepair. And for a quarter, I was in high school at the time, you could go in there at your own risk. And it was filthy. I mean, you know, there were beer cans and Coke cans and chicken boxes. And the trailer park was in graffiti, horrible graffiti. Every room was covered with graffiti. If you go in there now, they've left one room with the graffiti. But the trailer park was in front, and so.
Kam Wagert's still on the right hand, aren't they still
Yes,
there?
those
They
are-
remodeled
yes,
those?
right.
Okay.
But you guys look at that, look at the view, look at the aerial view. Just quickly, I'll tell you, at one time the Fulton Mansion encompassed 60 acres. And it has gradually shrunk to what you see now, you know, basically the mansion and just a little bit of property that they have.
So who put the RV park in and left the building and all that stuff?
I want to say it was the Mays family. I think that's right.
They owned all of that.
they own the mansion and they own the property. And they rented out the space for the RVs or the trailers. I like this because you all see all the Airstreams. I love Airstreams, I just love them.
And the turquoise one.
Yeah, the turquoise, yeah. It's just so much fun to study postcards. Okay, do you know what this is? Check my sheet.
Oh, that's where HEB is.
That's right, that's where the HEB is.
The new one?
The new
Did
HEB.
have a trailer park?
This was
Or a
the
trailer
Palo
there?
Alto Trailer Park, and on July 6, 2001, that's not that long ago, HEB bought the property, filled in the tank, and built their new store.
Wow, I don't remember. I don't remember the trailer park.
That's why Whataburger flags in there.
Well, she says that's why Waterburger floods now.
That's the
That's
runoff.
why Jim's house was.
The runoff lake is full.
Which side is 35 on?
35 would be, Jim, would it be at the top of the TV or to the left of the TV?
It's probably at the top because you got trailers in the back on the bottom.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it had to be at the top. Because
But
it
what-
circles halfway around.
Something else you must understand, when they had trailers at the mansion, there were no RV parks.
Ah.
They were just trailer parks, right?
No, they weren't even trailer parks. There weren't that many.
Well, those Airstreams, they-
This one came later.
But the Airstream started in
At all, really? I don't remember it being a trailer park.
30.
Okay.
Park there.
That's
the old aquarium.
In 1935, a man by the name of Albert Collier, who happens to be, if you know Janie White, that's her daddy, he had the first marine lab on board the boat, the Vivian. And he had marine specimens. And then in 1947, they built this marine laboratory. And it was so cool because the downstairs had aquariums and they had tanks where they had fish that only came from the local bays. And I don't mind telling you, I went there many times because number one, it was free. Number two, it was air conditioned. But again, look at these cars. And if my friend David Murr were here, he would say, okay, that's whatever year. This is late 40s.
Was that Parks and Wildlife or you know?
Parks and Wildlife. Okay, here I am looking at the fish in the tanks, and this was what we would do. We would go to Rockport Beach, and it was so hot, and we'd get so sweaty and sandy, and then we would go in there because it was air conditioned, and just have such a blast looking at the fish and the crabs and the shells, and you know, it was just wonderful. And then
My oyster reef.
they did. It was just wonderful.
Which one?
Hey, in the 70s,
Which one is she?
as a child, I would go, and the aquarium still looked like that, you guys.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
In the late 70s.
Yeah, Lucretia remembers.
I do.
Yeah.
Cam,
Yes,
what
ma'am.
was the big fish's name? Was it Ruby? The red fish?
I don't remember.
Well, she had a name, wasn't she?
I know she did have a name. You remember Lucretia?
Nope, that was before me.
Yeah.
Sounds good, doesn't it?
But the lady with the purse for me. I like looking at fashions too, you know? So anyway. So, okay, here it is. Another great favorite of mine. Okay, this is the Delmar Grill, which is the building where Topo Cosby had his studio. Maureen, what's in there now? I forget.
Antique.
Antique place.
So here's the story on this. The Silvermans bought the Delmar Grill, and the lady's name was Dorothy. She was famous for her crab cake. So in 1947, they put this crab on the top of the building. So it was made out of paper mache and chicken wire, but it stayed up there until 1965 when the Chamber of Commerce bought the crab. The plan was to use that crab in parades and put it on floats and advertise Rockport and Fulton. Well, that only worked for a couple of years. So then they moved the crab to Veterans Park down by the harbor. They had a Winter Texan paint the crab, and he painted the claw tips red, which turned the male crab into a female crab. So people, myself included, probably Lucretia, we would all go down there and have our picture with the big crab.
That's right.
So then in 1976, the crab completely completely deteriorated, just completely fell apart because it was made of paper mache, chicken wire. And they literally took it down, took it out to Palm Harbor and gave it a Christian burial. So then about, I'm thinking 6 years ago, there was a committee of 3 people. That would be David Herring, Diana Harrington, and myself. We decided that we had to bring back the crab. So what we did, we started selling pencils and hats and anything that had a crab on it, Oyster Fest and Seafair and the Chamber of Commerce. And we finally raised enough money that this fellow, whose name is David Allgood, one day walked into the Aransas County Historical Society lab and he said, "I can build that crab for you." And we said, "Really?" Because we've been getting bids for it that were, you know, $25,000, $50,000, and oh, by the way, then bring it down to Rockport for an additional fee. So he built us that crab, and he didn't charge us for his labor. I'm talking about the one that's at the entrance to the beach. And what happens right off the bat, a windsurfer gets the rope tangled up in that back flipper, and y'all know it broke off. Well, thankfully, Malcolm Deco, who is the chairman of the navigation district, has had it repaired, has it repainted. Now, I know it's bright, but guess what? It's going to fade. It's back to its old self. It's really gorgeous. It's beautiful.
We went by a garage sale and saw this crab being made in this man's yard.
Oh, yeah.
And I told Fred, stop the car.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
my husband thought, you know, he's always saying, you're always hollering, stop the car. Well, I had to get out of I said, just stop the car and see what he's doing. And he told me what he was doing. I thought it was amazing. He's doing it
In his yard. And it was so funny because we would go by and there would be a big claw up here and the body here and the back flipper back here. And David Herring, I think, is 88 years old now, but he's a structural engineer by trade, and he would go almost daily over there to make sure it was being built right, and it was being built right. I mean, he used stainless steel and just rebar. It was a great crab until that rope got tangled up in it. But anyway, it's back. Go see it. You won't be
They
disappointed.
had a putt golf.
Oh,
Yeah, I remember that.
We did.
got a picture of
yeah.
that. With that.
And I have to correct you, it wasn't below the crab. The Putt Golf Course was where the old chamber building was. It was run by a man named Stroop, Mr. Stroop. It was to the left of the old chamber building, that field. The crab was in the park. Oh, this is a good one. Look at this. We used to have sawfish in Pocono Bay.
Oh, wow.
And this is very early, probably 19-teens. And that's a sawfish. And y'all know that sawfish is on the side of that building in Austin Street, right? You know the sawfish that's on the side of the building, so there you go.
Oh, on the side of that barber shop.
Okay, this is a picture. Look real close. This is Sea-A-Rama. So starting in the 1960s until 1970, the first weekend in June, 1974, excuse me, they had an event that the chamber put on called Sea-A-Rama. And there you see how small it was, just a little group of tents. This is way before the Maritime Museum. This is way before the Mid-Beach Pavilion and the Saltwater Pavilions. And Key Allegro's not there either. Then in 1974, they did away with Sea-A-Rama and started Seafair. But see the boat races going on in the sea basin?
There's no island.
Key Allegro is way beyond the beach.
No, it's ski base on Island Center.
Oh, you're right. You know, I think, Jim, they put that in later. I think they brought Sandy. I think they first see No, this is the big tree. This is an early picture of the big tree. And used to be, y'all can see what kind of fence they had around it. You could just go right up to it. You could climb it. It is considered to be, by us Texans who like to brag, the biggest live oak in the world. But, you know, it is 2,000 years old. Now, here's another thing I love about postcards. Not only do I collect postcards, I collect stamps. So I like to look at the stamps. I like to look at the writing on the back. Some people only collect postcards if they're pristine and don't have writing. Now look at the writing. So, when bathing twice today, it's fine. And tonight we had a little dance in the pavilion, enjoying resting and sleeping, eating fine, write to us with love. Tess. Okay, the pavilion's the Bailey Pavilion. Right. You know, because this is on the back of one of my Aransas County postcards.
Kam, may I make a mention that
people used to think that if you took the stamp off of the card or the envelope, that it was worth more money. It's not. They call it on cover if you leave it on, and the stamps enhance the value of the postcard and vice versa. So the stamps are more valuable if you leave them on there rather than tear them off.
And Turk, before you got here, I mentioned you. This is the fellow that collects hundreds and hundreds and thousands of postcards. This is Turk Overturk.
Thank you.
Where do you want to go, President?
I got about 40,000.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you don't need any more.
If anybody has any they want, Jim knows I like to buy them.
Hey, Kam, can you talk a little bit about, are most of them early ones, the backs, are they sent from people from San Antonio? Or can you see any trends during the time frames of where?
As a matter of fact, the ones, you're right, for some reason, okay, the ones that are, the older ones are San Antonio, and it's to a SPON, S-P-O-N, it's a SPON hospital family. It's very strange that you asked that, that's true,
And you guys, look, that's before the zip code had to be used.
right?
There's a date on it, there's no date.
But you know what, I can date this for you,
Okay.
because sort of, the Bailey Pavilion was destroyed in 1919. So this is pre-1919. If they went dancing in the pavilion, okay, it's gotta be summertime, right, or spring, why they probably wouldn't go dancing in the wintertime in the pavilion, so I can sort of date it. Thank you. Turk is here if you want to ask him about any postcard in the world, because he collects every one. And the book is for sale. It's $20. It has, I think, 100 of the postcards. And I forget who has the postcards that are for sale. Maureen, you know? Okay. Reba has them. These are real duplicates of postcards.
We have some programs for this particular exhibit, and on the back is our upcoming activities, and Kay Betts is going to do the next Collector's Corner in May, and on Mexican art and crafts, if you'd like to have our
You already got one?
okay. Okay, if you can just pass them that way. Great, thank you.
I do.